Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Legends of Tomorrow episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's Legends of Tomorrow episode review. And this is my review of Season 1, Episode 11, entitled The Magnificent Eight. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. Once again, this was another episode that had some really good ideas. However, it was delivered with a lack of exploration and a bit of poor execution. And I'll get into more detail with that later on in this review. So, in this week's episode, Rip and the rest of the team decide to go ahead and hide out in the Old West. We are in 1870 in this week's episode, and they're pretty much trying to wait out the Hunters, which is the elite team of bounty hunters deployed by the Time Masters to bring in Rip and the rest of the team. This is the very group that Mick warned the team about at the end of last week's episode. So, being that it's set in the Old West, that this is a Western episode, of course, the conflict for this episode is that really, Ray is the main one in charge here. Ray decides to go ahead and intervene when a group of gangsters decide that they want to go ahead and maraud in the town. So, plot-wise, I mean, like I said, it's an old Western episode. It's a Western story. So, yeah, it does make sense that we would be getting sort of that generic story. But what was surprising is that we got a guest star cameo once again in this episode, Jonah Hex, who is, I guess you could call him DC's patent Western character. He guest stars in this episode, and long story short, they pretty much team up, they take down the gang, and the day is saved. Now, as I mentioned previously, this episode has some really good ideas. So I want to go ahead and I want to talk about those first. I want to talk about what was really cool. Okay, number one, the Western setting. It's always fun to go ahead and see characters take up these sort of Western, old Western cowboy-like tropes, you know, sort of go undercover, try to blend in with the time and whatnot. For those of you all who will recall the Justice League animated series episode, when Batman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern go to the Old West and they got to sort of, you know, dress the part and talk the part and acclimate to the times. And Jonah Hex was even a guest star in that episode. But if you recall from that episode, you know, it's always fun to sort of see these characters in those personas. Also because given the fact that it's such an old time period that they can't necessarily use their modern day gadgets, their modern day technology, so they always have to sort of resort to the old technology. Now, granted, we did get some conflict with that, what with Dr. Stein trying to save the kid who was suffering from tuberculosis and whatnot. But anyway, the Western setting, that was a good idea. I didn't mind that, and of course, because it gave us a chance to go ahead and use Jonah Hex, you know, so that he could be in an episode. Okay, that was cool. And even the fact how with Ray, Stein, Kendra, and even Rip, how they each sort of had an individual subplot in the episode, okay, that was a good idea. But as I mentioned, even with these good ideas, we got a lack of exploration. And this is what I'm talking about. Okay, so number one, we got Jonah Hex guest starring in the episode, right? But we got damn near little to no backstory on him. We learned nothing about Hex's past that would inform us about his character going into this episode. Nothing. And he didn't really play too big of a role in the episode if you really think about it. I mean, consider this. What with, oh, you know, there's the gang, we have to run them out of town, then we have to ambush their camp, then Jax gets taken hostage, and we have to go ahead and do this, you know, duel at high noon. Hex was really a supporting character throughout the entire episode, and at no point in time did he really do anything that any other character could have done. I mean, think about that. Also, when you take in consideration the fact how, like, Jax, for an example, did sort of fall into the backdrop in this episode, why couldn't Jax just have done everything that Hex did? Hell, even in terms of, like, getting involved in the conflict, it was Ray who was the one that went to speak to the sheriff and ended up getting offered the gig. It was Stein who went to the bar and talked to the bartender about, hey, where is this Stillwater gang held up at? So really, Hex didn't have a footing in the conflict of the episode. Not really. The second lack of exploration was Rip. Okay, I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why the writers decided to make this decision. So we learned that apparently Rip has been to this time period before when he was a time master, and that's where he knows Jonah Hex from. Now, here's the first, okay, if the first lack of exploration was Jonah's backstory, the second definitely had to do with him and Rip's relationship. We got no information about, you know, oh, we were told that at some point in time they knew each other, and at some point in time they worked together, but we didn't know, we know very little of what happened before Rip left. We don't know anything about him and Jonah's relationship other than what we were told, what we're supposed to believe. And whatever strong affiliation we got, I mean, that they have, we only got with, oh, Rip is wearing Jonah's coat. Oh, Rip decided to name his son after Jonah. But we have no reasoning for why he did those things. Yes, those things are supposed to imply that they have some type of close relationship, but we don't get any of that. We don't get any of that. And now is as good a time as any to do that. Also, here's the third lack of exploration. If in fact that everything that we were told was true, if in fact that was the case, why was Rip not the main focus of the episode? Rip should have been the main focus of the episode. Everything that Ray was doing, Rip should have been doing that. Not exactly in the same way. I mean, we don't really need to see Rip try to be, you know, the big bad in the Old West and all that type of stuff. We don't need that. But what I'm saying is, since Rip's whole reasoning for staying on the ship the entire time and not wanting to get involved, this is that and the other, and leaving the Old West when he was there, was the idea that because that time period is so vulnerable, Rip felt the urge to want to help beyond what was expected of him. And because of that, that would cause a threat to the timeline, correct? But here's the thing. We don't see Rip struggle with that. We're told that, but we don't see it. Why? Because he's on the ship the entire time. We don't see him in the town. We don't see him bearing witness to what's going on. We don't see him develop any type of relationship or even speaking with the people of the time period besides Jonah. So we don't actually get to see Rip experience those things. And it would have made even more sense if we would have gotten to see that, and then finally the turn in the episode would have been when Rip finally decided, it's like, you know what? I'm not even a time master anymore. There's no reason for me to stay on the ship. But that's not what we got. And I for the life of me, cannot figure out why they did not take that route. Because this really should have been Rip's episode. This should have been one of the episodes where he was the lead. Alright, so now the next thing I want to talk about, you want to talk about a huge lack of exploration. Okay, so for the first time in the series, Kendra actually encounters one of her past lives, one of her past incarnations. Not a flashback, not a vision. She actually speaks with one of her past incarnations still living. Still living. And what does that result in? Oh, don't get attached to whoever you're in a relationship right now because you're not destined to be with that person. So, once again, second week in a row, actually, they do something really interesting with Kendra, with her past, and it results right back to the Kendra-Ray relationship. I've had it now with that, okay? Because two episodes in a row, we do this, and I've had enough. For once, can we get a female character who has a character arc, who has her own subplots, who has her own journey, and it doesn't have to do shit with the man she is in a relationship with? Can we do that for a change? I'm just asking, because I'm done with that. I'm done. At no point in time did we ever get anything like, oh, you're my future self. I'm one of your past lives. Maybe I have information about Carter or about Savage that you can use in your quest to defeat him. You know, they brought up the whole thing about how at one point in time her past life had a bracelet that was attached to her priestess life, and you know, those artifacts have power against Savage, but she doesn't have it. At no point in time did she share, oh, well, she said, oh, it was stolen or something like that, but they didn't try to track it down. She didn't mention another artifact she might have ran across. I mean, we're talking about an incarnation that is well within her years as an older woman, and at no point in time did she share any information other than relationship bullshit. What the hell? Okay, and then finally, my final note on the episode is going to be the poor execution. The hunters, we were told this was an elite group of bounty hunters, and they were feared amongst, you know, criminals of the timeline, and this, that, and the other, and they're taken out in less than 5 minutes. Really, it didn't take anything special to bring these guys down. The team didn't have to figure anything out. They didn't have to find a new angle. They didn't come up with any type of elaborate plan. They didn't do anything that would have given them a distinct advantage against them. No, we just got a fight in the town square. It lasted all of maybe 3 minutes. Hell, they even said Mick said it in the episode. Wow, that was easy. And now, the preview for next week's episode. Now we're supposed to be doing the whole Terminator themed episode, because now they're supposed to be going up against the deadliest assassin that the Time Masters have at their disposal, and she's supposed to be going throughout time, taking out the targets at a younger age when they're at their most vulnerable. So it's pretty much the Terminator, right? Okay, another great idea. Let's see if they actually pull this off. Because now we actually do get an antagonist that actually is using the timeline to their benefit. Because I've said it before, I do not understand that if the Time Masters can actually, you know, access the timeline and navigate it and maneuver the way we've been told, why have they not tried to take out members of the team before 2016? Why have they not tried to stop Rip himself before he decided to go renegade? We haven't seen the Time Masters try to use time travel to their own advantage. Now this is the first time we're being given that option. So we'll have to see next week if they pull it off. But I gotta be honest with you guys. 2 weeks in a row, we've been given episodes that have some really good concepts and just terrible execution. So we'll see what happens next week. I really don't have my hopes up. I think they're going to squander what should be a perfect opportunity to do some interesting stuff in the show. But we'll just have to see. So that concludes my Legends of Tomorrow episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. And in the comments below, please leave your thoughts on this week's episode and let me know what you guys think about the preview for next week's episode. If you like this review, please feel free, thumb it up. Share it with other fans of the show and people you think would get a kick out of my review. And if you have yet to do so, make sure you subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. Annotation is above head. And join me tomorrow for my Vikings episode review. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.